This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And we are back for another edition of the Primetime Podcast here on Most Valuable Podcast. If you're new to the show, this is where you get all your college football, college basketball. Maybe we'll do college baseball one day. Maybe.
I don't think so.
Maybe we'll do the College World Series. I don't know. The future can hold anything, but mainly we do football and basketball here in the world of college sports. We have a special treat for you guys. Before I get to that, though, a little bit of house cleaning. If you have not already, go down to the description, check out our Patreon page. We've revamped the Patreon goals for you guys. And if you're not sure what Patreon is, it's a way for you guys to support us rather than watchable on top of watching these videos. We revamped our rewards for you guys so that you guys can go check that out, get a little bit. One's a Patreon podcast. Another is call-in segments, so you can call in and talk about college football with Brandon and I if you choose. You could also choose the fast break and onside kick. That's my bit of house cleaning, though. I have to pump the Patreon page.
And let me just take a minute.
Okay.
All right. We're going to give you a second. Go and look at the link. We'll give you a minute. So go and look at it. It's different. If you've done this before, if you've already looked at it, and now we know, take a look.
It's on the right-hand side.
Give you 5 seconds.
Sorry to our Blog Talk listeners right now. I have to wait.
All right. You're back, and we're ready to roll.
And what we are doing today, special edition, is we're kind of doing a mock draft. We're reacting basically to my mock draft, my preseason mock draft. I finally am coming out with it. But we're not reacting to it in the sense that you are used to. Brandon and I are the college side of things. Mark and I are the NFL side of the things. So today we're going to show you the mock draft. However, Brandon and I are going to talk mainly about the prospects today, about the players that are in the mock draft, not necessarily where they're fitting into NFL teams, because that's Mark and my job to do later in the year after these teams are already tired of veterans that could be leaving or they're trying to trade people. Well, we know trades never happen by the trade deadline in the NFL, but we would like to hope that one day it does. But how we do it, we're splitting it up into 3 segments for you guys on YouTube. The full thing is on Blog Talk Radio /Primetime Podcast. And I'm going to read off right now here the top 10 picks that we're going to get into today. Number 1, the 49ers. Also, this order is a combination of Mark and myself's combined records for the NFL this year, our prediction. So that's where we got the order. Number 1, the 49ers drafting Sam Darnold out of USC, not UFC, USC. Then we got the New York Jets taking Josh Rosen. The Chicago Bears taking Mike McGlinchey out of Notre Dame. I hope I said that name right. Probably didn't. We got the Browns at number 4 taking Saquon Barkley, the running back from Penn State. Jaguars going Josh Allen. The quarterback, Bills go Minkah Fitzpatrick from Alabama. Chargers going Christian Wilkins from Clemson. The Rams go Arden Key from LSU. We got the Broncos going Tavares McFadden, the cornerback from Florida State. And rounding out this top 10, the Carolina Panthers going Calvin Ridley, the wide receiver out of Alabama. And Brandon, there are a few guys that we have kind of highlighted here that we're going to hit. We're not going to hit every single player within this. We've got some bullet points, some guys that we want to talk about. And the first one, mainly because he's kind of on his own, and he's a little high in my mock draft to some people. I want to ask you this. Saquon Barkley, we've talked about him. We mentioned him in the Penn State preview. He's been a big guy whenever we bring up Penn State. I want to ask you this. Coming into this season that starts this Saturday for college football, big weekend, can't wait. Could Saquon Barkley at the end of this year be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft?
Yeah, he really could. And the reason I say that with pretty much certainty,
with conviction,
is because if you take a look at where he was, and I know that that stats from past years are one thing, and what he does this year is going to be another, but you have to take a look at his progression, and that will show you then where he could be this year. So in year 1, 2015 with Penn State, he played in 11 games, had 182 carries, 1,076 yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground, 1 through the air on 20 receptions. All right, that's great. That's your freshman campaign. Really good, very formidable. What can you do year 2? So he comes out year 2 last year as a sophomore, 14 games, so he plays in 3 more games, 272 carries, 1,496 rushing yards, 18 rushing touchdowns, and then on 28 receptions, he has 4 touchdowns, a total of 22 touchdowns on the season. Now, Ricky, that's a huge jump from freshman to sophomore seasons. And now his ceiling is so high for his junior campaign. Could we see 22 touchdowns on the ground and 25 overall touchdowns? I mean, the sky's the limit for this guy. And he is so talented. He's so shifty. He's so quick. He's very, very good. And when you take a look then, I know this is you and Mark, any team, any NFL team is going to probably want a guy like that who can run the ball well, who can catch out of the backfield. This is a guy who could be a very, very, very good running back. And now, could top 5 be a stretch? You know, I still don't think so. But top 10, certainly. If he has a season, even if he repeats the season he had this past year, he'll be in the top 10, without a doubt in my mind.
And to me, the top 10 is not really out of the picture for him. And the reason why I say that is the exact thing that you mentioned right now, the fact that, he can run the ball, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. We had a running back who could do those same things, come out, get drafted 8th overall. Some thought it was kind of a bit of a reach from the Panthers when they took Christian McCaffrey in the first round.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
This past year. To me, with the running backs, and I don't want to harp on both of them because we're going to get to the second guy I'm going to mention later in this mock draft because he is going to be picked later in my mock draft. But the thing that I think this season comes down to when it comes to who's going to be the best running back in this draft class, and everything is up for question because there are concerns, players don't have to come out necessarily. This is what we're thinking right now in the preseason. It comes down to Barkley or Geis. Which one is going to do better? And I mean, right now, I feel like I'm leaning with Barkley majorly because of the fact that his team is going to do better. And when I say do better, I mean LSU is kind of handcuffed in a way because they're playing in the same division as Alabama. And I'm sorry, Alabama's making the playoff. Like, there is no way that Alabama misses the playoff this year. I know I just pissed off all of Tiger Nation. I'm sorry, but that's just how I see it this year. Whereas Penn State, they're going to be in a 3-team race with Michigan and with Ohio State to be the representative. And I'm not trying to backhand Wisconsin when I say this, but the winner of the Big Ten most likely is coming out of the Big Ten Beast this year, as I like to call it. They're going to be in a 3-dog race with the Buckeyes and the Wolverines. So that's why I feel like the national spotlight might be more so on Barkley, which may help him when we get to drafts and when we're doing everything. I know that like this could be a conversation of, who do you take, Saquon Barkley, or do you take Darius Geis? That's the kind of question that we're going to be answering because, yes, Barkley can do it both. He can catch the ball, he can run the ball, and he had 5.5 yards per carry last season. That's right around the 6 yards that you want your running back to have, where Geis, I'm looking right now, averaged 8.7 yards per carry in 2015, 7.6 in 2016. So Geis gets a little bit more yards on it, and that's just the style that he runs with. I feel like that's the question we're going to have when we talk about Barkley and Geis, but I'm top 5 right now. I'll be honest, the only reason I have him in there is I could see the Browns going at him because I am not a huge fan of Isaiah Crowell. I know you are. You said you traded for him in your fantasy league, but that's why I have him right now in top 5. He's going to be a top 10 pick, though, when we get there. I want to ask you about the only other single guy we have in this top 10, though, a guy that is near and dear to your heart because he plays for your Alabama Crimson Tide. We've talked about him before on the primetime. I have him at number 10 going to the Panthers. Calvin Ridley. What do you expect from Ridley coming into 2017?
Calvin Ridley, I see some really good things for him, and I see some good things for him because he's the guy now. Our Darius Stewart is gone. Calvin Ridley is going to be the guy because who else is gone? O.J. Howard. He's also gone. He's now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Ridley is going to be leaned upon to do more than just be a deep threat. He's going to have to, I think, pick up some of those routes over the middle. He's going to have to do some of the crossing routes. When we talked about Calvin Ridley earlier in the summer, this is the same type of thing I said with him, which is why he is going to be leaned upon so much more. So his numbers from the last couple of years, they're going to show that's going to be great, but he's going to be doing so much more this year. So I expect his numbers to be even better because he's going to be leaned upon basically in a bigger role for Jalen Hurts.
Bigger stats, more volume. It's going to be more stats because of more volume.
Absolutely. That's how I would see it playing out. And Jalen Hurts is going to be looking for him early and often. I'm not saying that Alabama doesn't have anyone else, but when you want to just scope in on one guy, and Calvin Ridley is your guy who's been there for a while, that's the guy who you're going to lean upon. That's the guy that you know is your go-to. Well,
and the thing that I think about when
go ahead. I was just going to say I had a pause and I was thinking about it again. Is that that's why even back when we talked about it, I could see Calvin Ridley being one of, if not the top receiver coming out this next year for the draft because he's going to be so multi-dimensional going to a team, especially after this year when I think he's going to be asked to do a whole lot more than what he's done in the past. And if he succeeds and excels in that spot doing that, a team's going to love to see that.
Well, and the thing I'm looking at is right now kind of the top receivers that could challenge him for the top receiver spot when we get to the draft. And here's just what I see before I get into Ridley. The next one down, I'm looking right now at Mel Kiper and his top 10 each positional rankings. He has the top 10 for each position. Number 2, he has behind him in Christian Kirk. The thing that I think will hurt Kirk when it gets to the draft is, yeah, he's tough. Yeah, he can do this, but he hasn't played in an NFL system. He hasn't run the NFL route tree. How is that going to affect? Now, you can go to the combine, you can prove that wrong, but right now that's a negative. DJ Clark, kind of the same thing at LSU that we're dealing with Calvin Ridley of, okay, you've got Dupree gone, you've got Durrell gone. What are you going to do now that you're going to get more targets? That's going to kind of create a rivalry within the SEC. And then another SEC receiver, he's not even going to get to play week 1 because of a suspension, Antonio Callaway.
Yeah.
I wonder if he will have, how much the off-the-field concern will scare NFL scouts when we get to the draft. I know right now it's so early that people could forget about it, but I don't know how he's going to compare to Ridley. And now getting to Ridley, the main guy that we're talking about here in the top 10, my only concern for him is when corners press him, when he's in press coverage, because open field, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Nightmare on the outside, has the acceleration, and the thing I love about him is like, give me a wide receiver who's willing to block, and I'll draft him. Because you throw your body at the guy. Don't just go, oh, I'm blocking you. Oh. But my only concern is, what are you going to do in press coverage? Because when you get to the next level, they're bigger, faster, stronger than the cornerbacks in college. So what are you going to do when an NFL cornerback starts to press you and starts to rough you at the line? Because if that kind of knocks you off your game a little bit, NFL defensive coordinators will pick up on that, and they will send their corners at you to press coverage. So that's the only thing I want to see from Calvin Ridley coming into this year. What do you think, though, real quickly, when you think about him compared to the other wide receivers, kind of like what I mentioned, mainly like Kirk, Clark, all of them are SEC now that I think about it?
Well, I think that, again, the reason why I want to say I love Callaway. I really like Antonio Callaway. I think that he's a really great wide receiver. I think he's a wonderful deep threat. And that's where I see Callaway. He is the deep bomber.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put him too much in a Ted Ginn type of role because, you're each of you is your each individual unique receiver. But he's that like Brandon Cooks. Like Brandon Cooks ain't usually catching, a 7-yarder across the middle. He catching a 70-yarder down the sidelines. And that's where I see kind of Antonio Callaway. And the reason why I think that would put Ridley, especially after this season, apart from Callaway, is that Ridley is going to have to do more than just that. That won't be enough. That won't be enough. That won't satisfy what Alabama's offense will need. We saw in the last 2 years for Calvin Ridley. In year 1, he was just shy of 90 receptions on the year, over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. Year 2, less receptions, 72, less yards, 769, same amount of touchdowns, but he also had a rushing touchdown as well. So we had 7 freshman year, 8 in his sophomore year. I think we see him at 90, maybe even plus receptions, over 1,000 yards, and certainly repeating on that 7 touchdown mark. And the reason, again, like I mentioned, that puts him separate from Callaway and that puts him, I think, Ridley in a different league is, as Antonio Callaway, I see him as the deep threat, the just big bomber. Ridley is that, but he is more. And he's quicker across the middle. And I think that's going to help him, and that's going to put him apart, set him apart from the Antonio Callaways and the rest of the guys in the SEC.
And I know I said I wouldn't do it, but forgive me here. That's why I had him going to the Panthers, because could you imagine him as the number 2 with Kelvin Benjamin over the middle of the field? A little quick option. Well, wait, Kelvin Benjamin needs to stay on the field first. Ha, ha, ha. There's an injury joke.
He will. I
hope
him
so.
too.
I had him in fantasy last year, and he screwed me. But the other guys, really quickly, we have 3 other guys that I want to get to. The first one, these are the defensive guys in this top 10. First one, Arden Key. And I mentioned him a while ago here on the Primetime Podcast the week that I took the solo cast where I can't remember what you were doing, but you couldn't make the podcast. No, this was way before Florida, that you couldn't make the podcast. And my thing about Arden Key,
probably another Florida trip.
Maybe. The thing about Arden Key is because in my top 5, it's all offensive guys, mainly because the quarterbacks. And if you want to hear us talk about the quarterbacks, Brandon and I kind of decided we've talked about them enough. So if you want to talk, you want us to hear us talk about them, I'll put all the videos we've talked about the quarterbacks down below in the description. You guys can go ahead and check them out. But Arden Key, I have him at 8. Don't have him in the top 5. I have all offensive players in the top 5. I'll ask you this. Could he, as a pass rusher for LSU, be dynamic and good enough this season to be a top 5 pick this year in the draft? Like, I do not have him right now.
Yeah, I think so, Ricky. And the reason I say that is because he has 16 sacks in 2 seasons. And was he not injured for part of last year?
Yes, he was.
You get him help.
He was injured, and then this whole offseason, we weren't sure if he was coming back, but he is now.
You get a healthy Arden Key. You get a healthy Arden Key back. Get the entire season with him being healthy. That is a force for LSU. That is a guy who is a very good pass rusher. Very good pass rusher. I mean, his name has been brought up multiple times when you're talking about defense. Not just SEC defense, but defense.
Period.
I think that he could be a great pick for somebody in those top rounds if you are looking for a guy to be a pass rusher. I mean, we've seen what the New York Football Giants have done with going with Olivier Vernon and Jason Pierre-Paul, and how important that is when both of them are healthy, how much of a difference that makes. You get a guy in there like an Arden Key who can one day be your Jason Pierre-Paul, just with maybe all of his limbs. I think that is something any team, especially in bad shape for defense, would want.
And I'm trying to do a little bit of quick research on the fly, which isn't usually the best way to do things. I just went 3 years back, so 17, 16, and 15. There has been a defensive end. Dante Fowler Jr., Joey Bosa, 3 each. Myles Garrett this past year, all top 3 picks in the draft. So if we have any Arden Key fans, go back a 4th year, there's Jadeveon Clowney. So if we do have any Arden Key fans, don't be like, oh, you're disrespecting the Arden Key here, not having him in the top 5. I'll be honest, right now in my mock draft, and this is me getting away from the players just to justify myself a little bit, I'm heavy on the quarterbacks. Jets may not take a quarterback. 49ers may not take a quarterback. 49ers may trade back if they get the number 1 pick because they might get Kirk Cousins and might not need a Sam Darnold. But that is it from the NFL guy on this side of the table. Last 2 guys I want to mention before we wrap this whole thing up is they're both cornerbacks. We've got Minkah Fitzpatrick going to the Bills at 6, Tavares McFadden out of Florida State, number 9 to the Broncos. I'm going to ask you, Brandon, like, who else am I going to ask? No one else is here. Which one of these cornerbacks in your eyes will be the top cornerback coming out into the 2018 NFL draft?
Minkah Fitzpatrick.
No bias, of course.
None.
No Alabama bias here.
None. No, Minkah Fitzpatrick has just been so, I would say, so dominant, so locked down. He has shown so many good things while he's been there in his time at Alabama. And it's not to say, again, that anyone else isn't going to be good, but when you put Fitzpatrick against McFadden, I just think Fitzpatrick has to win that one each time. And where you have him going to the Bills, I don't necessarily know if I agree with that, but having him atop there, that wouldn't be too far off.
Now, let me ask you this, because you're the Alabama guy. You can answer this better than I would. If you look at, because some people might say, well, Ricky, I'm looking at the McShay prospect rankings that you are. Fitzpatrick on some mock drafts listed as a cornerback. I have him listed as one. There are some, like Todd McShay, that have him listed as a safety. Where would you list him, safety or corner?
Well, it's funny that at another spot,
or is he a Jalen Ramsey and he can do both?
At another spot, I've seen him listed as a defensive back. So I see him as a cornerback.
Mainly as a cornerback.
I see him as a cornerback, and you know, he's a guy who in his freshman campaign had 45 total tackles, and sophomore campaign 66 total tackles. A guy who's able to have that many tackles and is able to get the number of interceptions that he did, especially this last year with 6, which really helped him stand out above the rest. You almost think, well, that's just not a safety. That's not even just a cornerback. He's a. I don't want to say he's the same type of guy that you got when who was playing for Michigan.
With Jabril?
Yes, Peppers, but similar.
Yeah,
very similar.
He's not that. Jabril was more of that star linebacker safety position, where Minkah Fitzpatrick is not that. When I see these two guys, and kind of my little hot take before we push on to the next segment, the main reason I had Fitzpatrick above McFadden is Fitzpatrick is the more developed. Like, he's still developing, but he is more developed than McFadden, to where if I'm taking one, who can I plug into my defense and be more for sure of how is he going to be year one, it's Fitzpatrick. The main thing McFadden has to do, kind of sure up that frame right now, like 6'2", 198 pounds is not the best frame. He needs to fill that frame out, but otherwise McFadden has everything I want in a quarterback as well. Can run with the receiver, can disrupt the receiver, can diagnose the play on the field, can read the quarterback well. So both these guys are great as defensive backs. That's why I'm looking more towards Fitzpatrick right now, because to me he's more complete. He's got less things that need to be there, but McFadden also has the skills. It's just his frame is my biggest weakness right now. But we've got about 2 minutes. Give me your last takes on anything you want.
Well, I was going to say I completely agree with that too, in the fact of what you were saying about Minkah Fitzpatrick, because in his year one, he played 14 games. McFadden played in 2.
Yeah.
So when you say that he's more developed and Minkah has come, I shouldn't say along better, I should say along quicker. He's at a different spot than McFadden is.
Yeah.
But McFadden could still have a good season this
No,
year,
he could.
and everyone could say, throw it out the window. He's good. But what I'm saying is that you're completely right in saying that. And if a team wants to go for a guy who's a little bit more seasoned, which again, that sometimes that doesn't matter, you may just want to go for the guy who you feel is the better raw talent and who will make more of an impact for your team. But if you're going for the guy who's more seasoned, Minkah Fitzpatrick is your pick. And you cannot forget, though, this past year with McFadden with 8 interceptions, he had an outstanding season. But he is certainly at a different spot than what Fitzpatrick is at.
And that's exactly why I had McFadden going with the Broncos, because I could see John Elway kind of being like, hey, Talib, it was nice having you. You injured Wes Welker in a playoff game one year, but you know what? You're getting old. It's time to go. McFadden's going to be the guy to come in. But we are going to move on. But before we do, let us know down below in the comment section, what do you guys think? Any of the players that were in my draft we didn't talk about? Any of the guys we did talk about? Let us know what you guys are thinking down below in the comment section. But Brandon, let's move on into the next picks that I have on my mock draft. And you guys get a bonus the next two segments here. If you're on YouTube, Blog Talk Radio, you're just continuing right through like a champ, because that's what you are. You get an extra pick. So the first segment was 10. The next two are 11 because there's 32 teams and not just 30 like there is for the NBA. So let's go through 11 through 21, starting it off the New Orleans Saints taking Derwin James, the safety from Florida State. Then the Cincinnati Bengals at 12 taking Connor Williams, the offensive tackle. The Redskins at 13 going Mason Rudolph, Brandon's Heisman winner. Then the Lions at 14 going with Deshaun Hand, the defensive tackle from Alabama. 15, the Colts going with Darius Geis, running back from LSU. Cardinals going Luke Falk, another quarterback. Dolphins going with Bradley Chubb, the defensive end. Browns with the Texans pick going with Malik Jefferson, going with the linebacker. Then 19, the Ravens going Christian Kirk, the wide receiver from Texas A&M. Then the Buccaneers go offensive tackle in Orlando Brown. And the Eagles round up this segment with the linebacker from Boston College, Harold Landry. And Brandon, we've got some guys that we're going to talk about in this one, but the first two that I want to hit, I lied and said we weren't going to talk about quarterbacks. I just meant that for the first segment because we've talked about Rosen, Allen, and Darnold enough. But we haven't talked about Luke Falk or Mason Rudolph enough. And I don't want to get into individually like what makes them what they are, because we know at this point what they are. What I want to ask you is, let's say the Redskins at 13. They're a great team. They're a perfect team because Kirk Cousins is not going to be there after this season. They're going to be looking for a quarterback. If you can put yourself in the shoes of the head coach. You can put yourself in the shoes of Snyder. So Gruden or Snyder, if you're looking to draft a guy, either Falk or Rudolph, which one would you go with and why? If you needed a quarterback, not necessarily like you're the Redskins, but if you wanted a quarterback for your NFL system, who would you go with?
Mason Rudolph. And I'd go with Mason Rudolph because Mason Rudolph's playing against the better teams. Mm-hmm. And he's being put in
well, I wouldn't say, like, the Pac-12 isn't that much less. He goes up against Washington. Falk goes up against Washington.
Okay. Okay, but I still think that look at some of those other teams that he's going up against. They're not. I mean, as I guess you could say too, against the Big 12.
Well, they don't play defense.
They don't play defense. They don't play defense. I'll always hold strong to that. But he's going up against the teams like the Oklahomas, the Kansas States, the Western Virginias. Did I say Western Virginia?
You said Western Virginia.
Why did I say Western Virginia?
I don't know.
It's been a very fucking long day, man.
You meant the West. We know what you mean.
It's been a very long day.
We know what you mean. West Virginias.
And Western Virginia is another school.
Whoever goes to Western Virginia, they are very happy right now.
Oh, my gosh. I need to go to bed. But West Virginia, you're going up against, I think, better quality teams right there. In the Pac-12, you're going up against USC and Washington.
Well,
I mean, what else? But what else do you want me to? What else would you like me to talk about with Mason Rudolph? He's got he's got a better set of skills, I think, as a quarterback. He's got an extremely strong arm to be able to heave it down the field. He is very smart in terms of his reads and where he's going with the foot. The guy really doesn't mess up much.
And that's the big thing. When you look at his stat line, 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 4 INTs. Most people are saying, sign me up for that. Especially in the NFL, like, you want a quarterback to where it's going to be, don't turn over the ball. And that's what Mason Rudolph showed, especially from last year, that he doesn't turn over the ball well. And with the arm strength, although in college I feel like it's good, I have questions about it when we get to the NFL. Because, like, guys that try to live just on their arm strength, you got to be really good to be able to do that. Because the two sides of that, you can either be Brett Favre, who lived on his arm strength as a gunslinger and was able to have a successful career, or you could be Jay Cutler. So, I mean, there's two sides to the coin there. The thing that I think kind of separates these two into quarterbacks is you look at Rudolph, and like you said, doesn't make mistakes. He's got the frame that you want at 6'4", 233. He's got that mental makeup as a quarterback that you want. But then you look at Luke Falk, and the thing that you look at him is the good things are he's got tremendous accuracy. He's a rhythm passer. So if you have a system that can get him into short passes, kind of get him into a rhythm, kind of get that accuracy going. The main question, though, with him is he plays in a passer-friendly system thanks to Mike Leach. Can he get out of that? Can you pull him out of that and play in a more pro system that might not be as passer-friendly as he is used to? However, he is still going to rack up the yards. He actually had more yards than Mason Rudolph last year. And to me, it comes down to, what do you want? The guy with the complete mental makeup and the frame, but the arm could be amazing or not that amazing. It's kind of a two-sided coin there. Or do you want the guy where it's like he's a rhythm passer, he is going to be accurate, but can he play in my system? And that's why with the Redskins, I picked Mason Rudolph only because of that. You know what? We need a guy that can start day one. We can't have any questions about our quarterback. We can't let the fans go out and roast us. And that's kind of what I saw with this and why I had the Redskins go with Mason Rudolph and then the Cardinals go with Luke Falk, because I kind of feel also that Bruce Arians is that kind of guy that fit the system, could bring in a Luke Falk. Okay, this is now your system. I am going to work with you to fit this system. Although Bruce Arians is a defensive-minded coach, still being the head coach, he'd work a little bit with Luke Falk. I want to ask you about the next guy, and we kind of mentioned him with Saquon Barkley, but I want to get more in-depth on him. I have the Colts going with Darius Geis. What do you think from Geis this year? What does he need to do in your mind to be the number one running back off the board and maybe out of this bracket into the top 10? What does Geis need to do?
Well, he's going to need to stay healthy. He's going to need to stay healthy because that was, he came in for Leonard Fournette when Leonard Fournette got hurt. And then he needs to stay healthy. He was really good when he came in for Fournette, and then last year, he got injured himself. So if he can't stay healthy, that's going to be tough. That's going to be really, really tough. And what I think is really interesting now, looking right at this, is that Arden Key will not. This goes back. Arden Key is not going to be playing in the game coming up.
Okay.
For
Saturday
for LSU, and then so he won't be playing. And then I'm sorry, I'm looking at that, and then Darius Geis is not 100%. He's not 100% guaranteed to play. And the reason why I bring that up is because this is so vital. This is so critical when any team is looking at a player. Now, having off the field issues is one thing, and the Dallas Cowboys will take you no matter what. But having lingering injuries that could really hurt you. And it's like going out to the store and buying something doesn't really work or could break down at any moment, but you're going to get it because it's supposed to be the best.
I'm thinking I'm going to twist that a little bit. I don't want to spend as much money on the brand new thing, so I'm going to buy the used one. I'm paying less, but it might break on me because it's not the best used item that I could be getting. Or
knowing that it's one of the best items out there,
but it might flop.
But unfortunately, it could just go kaput at any minute.
Yeah.
You don't want that to be the guy that you go out in their draft. And Darius Geis has got to be able to shake the injury bug, and he's got to shake it early. Because if he doesn't, he will see his draft stock fall.
Well, and that's why, to me, the big question is, yes, you got to be on the field to do this, so your point kind of is a precursor to this. I want to see what you do with number one reps when you are the only guy in Death Valley for the Tigers. Because last year, came in for Leonard Fournette, but even when Fournette came back, it was kind of like a two-headed dragon there. They were still using both. They had the foot quickness of Geis and more of that power, but the acceleration of Leonard Fournette that they could still use. I still remember vividly in my mind at Dave's house watching, I want to say it was the Ole Miss LSU, and just watching Fournette blow down the sideline and put the defender in the ground like he was burying him in a grave. That's how hard he hit him running towards the end zone. And for Geis, my big question for him is, what can you do as the number one back? Because I'm going to bring Saquon Barkley back into the conversation that we talked about the first one. We know what he can do as the number one back. He did it last year. We know what he can do. Yes, his team is probably going to be fighting for a college football playoff spot, but push that off to the side. We know coming into this season when you talked about Saquon Barkley, you were talking about expectations for this year, taking what you did last year and building off of that. For Darius Geis, you could still say, hey, building off of what you did last year. I mean, I told you about the 8.5 yards per carry in 2015, the 7.6 yards per carry in 2017, and that was while playing behind Leonard Fournette. But kind of now take a look at those numbers. Yeah, those are impressive numbers. It's not like the time where I accidentally said 6 yards per carry wasn't that good. Tennessee fans will still not let me hear about that faux pas that I said during the Tennessee preview, but I want to know, are those stats a little bit inflated? Are they inflated because of Fournette? Not necessarily saying that Geis is only good because he had Fournette, but are they inflated a little bit because of how LSU used you in tandem with Leonard Fournette? Now with Fournette not being there, how can you do as the number one guy?
That's always going to be an important question. It's always going to be important because I'll bring up a perfect example of, let's say, Lamar Miller. So Lamar Miller, everyone, he's in Miami. He does well in Miami. People wanted him to be the primary lead back there, but there was always somebody else kind of chained to him.
Yeah.
He was great, but people were like, get him off, get him out of there because he can go and he can be his own guy and he can just take the load and go. So he goes to Houston. I've got him on my fantasy team, so I've got an invested interest in him. But he really, truly is a great example.
Again, no bias.
None. So he goes to Houston, and he's the lone guy. He is the lone guy. Alfred Blue would maybe spell him every once in a while.
Yeah.
He carries the ball well over 200 times, and he gets hurt because they used him too much. They leaned on him too much. And also they had Brock Osweiler, who's just awful.
So when you have a quarterback.
But that's also going to show when you're the only guy and there's not that really good dual, okay, we're going to use you in these situations. We're going to use you here. You're first and second. You're third and fourth. Or here, you're first, you're second, you're whatever. That's really important too, like you mentioned. And it shows how it can really wear down on a running back if they're not meant for that load, if they're not meant for that workload. And it's really interesting because sometimes it's not necessarily the running back, but it's how the head coach uses them.
Yeah.
How will Ed Orgeron use Darius Geis in his system when he's healthy? Is he the main primary back that he's not going to be spelling it much with anyone else? Or do they have somebody else they're going to be using too? I'm thinking they don't, but they want to put Geis out there because his talent his ceiling is out there. His talent
is the ceiling the roof? Are we going MJ here?
Well,
is the ceiling the roof?
Didn't everyone know that?
It's always the roof?
Yes.
Is that what we're going with?
Yes.
Okay. But back to the point.
But to wrap up Geis is that he's good. But how good is he? And how will Orgeron be able to use him effectively with him being the primary runner there? You bring up a really good point with that.
And that's kind of interesting. I want to bounce off of what you just said because you kind of sparked a little nugget in my brain. Looking at Todd McShay, what he has for Darius Geis, at the very end, he has his running style reminds him of Arian Foster, which I look and I go, okay, if you got the same, like Arian Foster didn't do too bad in the league. Had kind of a fizzle out towards the end, but what you were saying, more importantly, how is Orgeron going to use him, and the Lamar Miller example that you used, I thought of another example. This is on the other side. Now, I don't want LSU fans getting mad at me or anything, but
they will.
It could also be on the side of, think of Darren Sproles in the NFL. If you said Darren Sproles is my number one running back, I would be concerned. However, if you said, no, I've got, let's say, I don't know, Mark Ingram in front of him, then I'm going, okay. Like, Darren Sproles is a guy who, not completely, I'm not comparing him to Geis. I'm just saying that he's not a guy that can be your number one, but he can be your number two. And he can he can add on to whoever the starter is. I kind of think also like a CJ Spiller when he was with Clemson, number one running back in the NFL, second, third stringer in the NFL. Ask the Bills how CJ Spiller was as the number one running back. He was good, not great. And Geis, I feel like this year is going to be the year where we tread that line. Which way are you going to go? Are you going to solidify yourself to where an NFL pro or an NFL scout can go, yes, this is our number one back? Or are they going to look at you and go, hey, you know what? You have a grade, and I'm just using McShay's for the sake of argument. Yeah, you have a grade of a 91, but can I use you as the everyday guy, or am I just drafting you to be the add-on to the number one guy? Like, is that what I'm drafting you for? So that's going to be my big question when we get to the draft and when we get to, and there's a ton of things that can change. That's another stipulation I didn't say at the beginning, is there's a million different ways this season could play out. That's why this is the preseason mock draft. But the last guy I want to ask you about, because we got to talk defense. We can't talk offense for the entire middle part of this draft. I want to ask you about the guy I have going last to the Eagles, I believe, the 21st pick. Yeah, the Eagles I have selecting Harold Landry, Boston College, outside linebacker. Last year led the nation in 16.5 sacks, 7 forced fumbles in the 2017 campaign. Yes, he's an explosive edge rusher and has a burst off the outside, but this is a question I'm going to ask you because this is the team we actually opened up our college previews with. Is playing for Boston College going to hurt him, though, to where not necessarily, oh, you're on a bad team, you must suck, but the national spotlight isn't on you enough like it is on an Arden Key that we talked about in the first segment?
No, it won't hurt you because you're an NFL team. You've got NFL scouts. Mm-hmm. They know if they do their job well, they know where the good guys are. Doesn't matter if you're on the worst team. Doesn't matter if you're on the best team. Mm-hmm. If you're on the best team, yeah, you're right out there in the spotlight. Everyone can see you. Mm-hmm. They can see your mistakes. They can see your screw-ups. They can see your good things. They can see your bad things. You are on a smaller scale. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're not seeing it on TV, but they've got scouts there, so it's not going to hurt them. It's not going to hurt him being at Boston College. If you're good, people will find you. They will. They absolutely will. And if, like I said, if NFL team scouts are doing their job as good as they should be, they'll find him. There will be no problem, and a team will snag him up real quick. Well,
and the two guys, I'm gonna link one guy to him really quick because we're at the end of this segment. Harold Landry and Malik Jefferson, two guys that I have in this kind of 18 to 21 range at the end of this mini segment of this segment. They're the two guys I want to look at linebacker wise this year because they were the first two linebackers taken off my board in this preseason mock draft. I had not had a linebacker taken before I had the Browns go ahead and take Malik Jefferson. I'll be honest, I'm going to do it again. Only reason I had the Browns go with Jefferson is that, I don't know if there's a corner here that I necessarily want to reach on. I don't need an edge rusher on the line. I'm going to go with a linebacker. I'm going to go with Malik Jefferson, can play sideline to sideline and complement Jabril Peppers. They will need to separate themselves this season because Harold Landry, he is going to be an effective NFL player. I can just see it. He'll be the guy that is an NFL player to where you're going, where did he go to college? Boston? He went to Boston? Kind of like Matt Ryan, where you go, you're just sitting there with your buds. You're like, dude, where did Matt Ryan? Look it up. Where did Matt Ryan go to college? What? He went to Boston College? Huh? But they're not even that good.
Yeah.
That's the kind of pro that Harold Landry, I project that he'll be. Jefferson to me is sitting right there. They're sitting with him. It's going to be which one kind of separates themselves from the other. Landry, effective, explosive edge rusher. Malik Jefferson, a guy who can play outside, inside, can play sideline to sideline for your team. That's kind of the way that I have each of them going. But I want to turn this on to you guys. Let us know down below, what do you think of any pick that we have here for 11 through 21? And then kind of anything we talked about, the quarterback situation, the conversation we had between Rudolph and Falk. Who would you like better for your team if you were an NFL coach? Darius Geis, what do you think of him this season? And then kind of the more so Harold Landry, but also I threw in Malik Jefferson there as well, kind of the linebackers in this year's draft that we are going to see this season. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. But Brandon, let's finish up this mock draft looking at 22 through 32, the last 11 picks. And we'll start off with number 22, the Dallas Cowboys taking Anthony Averett, the cornerback, the Vikings, my Minnesota Vikings, going with, dude, if this guy, you know him, Golden Domer, offensive guard, Quentin Nelson, if he fell to us this late, I'd be happier than a pig in slop, Brandon. Would be so happy to have him on my team. Then the Bills getting the pick from the Kansas City Chiefs. They take Antonio Callaway, wide receiver from Florida. The Giants go with, not Mike Rankin, but Martinez Rankin, the offensive tackle. The Tennessee Titans going with Azim Victor, the linebacker. Falcons go with Billy Price, the offensive guard. Seahawks go with, and I'm going to screw this name up, I am sorry. They are going to go with Chukwuma Okafor, the offensive tackle. Then they're going to go with the Steelers taking Lamar Jackson. The Raiders going with Bo Scarborough, Brandon's boy. Packers going with Vita Vea, the nose tackle. And the Patriots rounding everything out with Sam Hubbard, the defensive end. And Brandon, I asked you before the segment started, who did you want to start with? And we're going to start with the 29th pick in my preseason mock draft, the Steelers pick, Lamar Jackson. And here's what I want to ask you, because he's right now in the Teddy Bridgewater territory. Teddy Bridgewater was taken, I want to say 31st. He was taken maybe 31st when he was taken. Vikings traded up to get him. Lamar Jackson not that far away. Is this kind of going to be a fair assessment of where he's drafted, or could this be seen as too low for Lamar Jackson in the NFL draft?
I don't think it's too low for him. I don't think it's too low for him. I think that it's probably the right spot, especially after I think that he's going to take a step back this year. I mean, there's no way he takes a step forward. I
hope he does.
I think it's almost impossible. I mean, from what he did last season to take then a step forward, if he did that, that would be incredible.
I mean, do the same thing.
It would be more power to him, but I just think that he takes a step back. So after last year and after winning the Heisman and then coming back down to earth in this year, I think that that's probably about right in where he is in his position.
And the thing that I kind of like, I was sitting there with Lamar Jackson. And I told you, I almost had him going in the middle group. I almost had him going 16 to the Cardinals because my thought process here was obviously the Niners, the Jets, the Jaguars, the top three quarterbacks were going to be Darnold, Allen, and Rosen. Like, those were going to be the guys that were taken. And when we got to that middle group, I was like, the Redskins, I almost put them with the Redskins first because I'm like, they're going to be replacing Kirk Cousins. Mason Rudolph can fit that Kirk Cousins role. But then I'm like, they did go with RG3 before going with Kirk Cousins. But then I'm like, that wasn't John Gruden. That was kind of a dysfunction there. Ended up not going there. Then I'm like the Cardinals, like, could Bruce Arians, the Cardinal matchup where he stays on the same mascotted team in the NFL? I just thought, I'm like, you know what, Bruce Arians, he's not the same kind of quarterback that Carson Palmer is right now. Not necessarily sure that he fits that system in Arizona. Okay, Luke Falk. Then I got to the Steelers, and I'm like, this is interesting. Mike Tomlin's a wild card. You've got Big Ben, who throughout his career has been a guy who can extend the play with his legs, isn't a traditional pocket passer, to say the least. I'm not comparing him to Lamar Jackson, though, because he is a lot bigger and more like a freight train than Lamar Jackson. Then I'm like, they took Joshua Dobbs last year, who isn't the traditional pocket passer. That's why I was like, you know what? If anyone's going to take him here in this last group, it's going to be the Steelers, because I just don't see the Bills moving on from Tyrod Taylor. And Lamar Jackson, I hope that I'm not going to say he's going to take a step forward, because like you said, you hit the nail on the head. It's going to be near impossible to improve on last year's numbers. However, I am praying and hoping that he stays the same, stays consistent, has a maybe not video game season, but has a season where you look at it and go, wow, he did well, didn't turn over the ball a lot this season, and his team did well. If he can carry and be the main reason Louisville gets to a college football playoff or gets to the ACC title game, that alone could go in huge momentum with carrying him in. And the big question about him in my mind is going to be, and I'll kind of propose this to you to see what you think, is him being a dual threat quarterback and not necessarily the traditional pocket passer going to scare teams away from taking a Lamar Jackson, because he's not necessarily he doesn't necessarily have those traditional pocket passing roles.
No, it's not. I mean, let's take a look at RG3. And let's not take a look at where RG3 ended up, but let's take a look at what he was when they got him. He was successful. He took the Washington Redskins to the playoffs.
Well, until he got broken, basically. That's the only thing that stood in his way, is he got broken. It wasn't like he fell off.
But here's the thing about it, is that when you get to the NFL, though, in which the NFL and the players know it's a different beast, you have to do things a little bit differently. And coaches have to understand that you're going to have to do things a little bit differently. Now, Lamar Jackson, I think, is a little bit bigger than what RG3 was. He would have to be very smart, and he'll have to be very smart when he comes into the NFL. But I think he can succeed for a team. And I do think that a team would take him. I mean, look again at, Russell Wilson right when he came in. Now, he wasn't an RG3, that's for sure, but he was the same type. He liked to run a lot. He started to get some injuries and realized, I can't be doing that as much. Another one, Dak Prescott, who you didn't like for a very long time, and now you're finally giving him some respect. Dak, I think, has kind of done it the right way. Guys can do it. You've just got to be smart. You've got to do it the right way. And your coach has to understand that too. They cannot mismanage how they use you within a game.
Well, and that's the reason why in my head, I just started thinking, I'm like, maybe this could be a similar, not a perfect situation that's the same, but a similar situation to Teddy Bridgewater. Not just because they both went to Louisville, but because, think about Teddy when he came out of Louisville. Everyone was high on him, especially Viking fans, because we drafted him, but the whole thing about his just mental makeup of like, oh, do I wear the gloves? Do I not wear the gloves? Teddy, 2 gloves. Do I wear them? Do I not wear them? Oh, I suck without them. Like the whole like mental yips that he was giving himself over these gloves. And before he got injured, I hope you come back soon, Teddy. I really miss you out there on the field, but no disrespect to Sam. I really miss Teddy Bridge over troubled waters, especially right now. But the thing is, maybe this could be a similar situation with Lamar Jackson coming out where, maybe I got to change some things because he was sacked 22 times in the last 3 games alone. That's not good.
Yeah.
Not good. And I completely agree when looking over Todd McShay's assessment of him. Same 2 question marks that McShay has, I have. Number 1, he's got to improve his accuracy. That's why I had Luke Falk ahead of him, because Luke Falk is a more accurate passer, and accuracy is key. Now, accuracy doesn't mean turn over the ball. He only had 6 INTs last season. However, you got to be accurate with the football. You can't be inaccurate in the NFL because defensive backs in the NFL, safeties in the NFL will make you pay. That 6 might go to 12, 18, maybe even 20 with NFL corners out there. Number 2, and this is interesting, kind of relating it to the Wildcat in a way, McShay puts, he was sacked 22 times in his final 3 games as teams seemed to figure him out. Could he be a guy that gets to the NFL, not flat, I don't want to say flash in the pan, because we got to see the rest of this season before he even maybe gets to the NFL, but the thing that is unique about the NFL from college is if college coaches were figuring you out as the season went on, NFL coaches, they're going to figure you out quicker.
Yes.
Because think about the Wildcat. Everyone was huge on the Wildcat. Then we figured it out and it was gone.
Yes.
Nobody uses, sparingly people use it, but boom, it was gone.
It's not around anymore.
It was gone like that.
It's really not around anymore
The
at
Miami Dolphins were like the innovators of it, and then boom, it's gone. Once Belichick figured it out and shared it with everyone else, they couldn't use the Wildcat anymore. But I want to actually go to Antonio Callaway. We kind of talked about him earlier when we were comparing him to Calvin Ridley, but I want to ask you this, more importantly because of how low I have him. I have him as the 3rd wide receiver off my board. Calvin Ridley was taken 10th overall. We had Christian Kirk was taken 19th overall. Now Antonio Callaway taken 24th overall. How much of what's happening right now with Callaway going to hurt him, if any, when we get to the draft?
Well, it doesn't look good when you're suspended for your first game of your junior season, which, let's be honest, your senior season, because it's the last one you'll probably play in college.
Yeah.
So you're suspended for game 1 of that, and it's a big game. I mean, no doubt about it. You're playing Michigan. No doubt about it. That's bad. If it's bad enough, what you did is bad enough to have you suspended along with 6, 7 other guys for game 1, for a game that you're needed. That's bad. That's horrible. Can you move past it? Yes. But is it going to be a mark on you? Yes. And I think that that's going to be something very interesting that teams will look at then is, okay, now how does he perform the rest of the year? How is he able to do as a human being, your normal everyday Joe outside of football? How is he acting? How does he carry himself? Those are all interesting things. And draft day. You saw draft day.
Well, also, I was going to say I missed a prime opportunity as a joke. Should have him go to the Cowboys. Cowboys don't care about the off the field. Can you run? You're a big vertical threat? Sure. Play with Des Bryant and fucking Bailey, whatever. Dak Prescott will hit you. That's where I should have had him go.
I think that it's really something where some NFL teams, they won't touch it. I mean, we've seen it with Colin Kaepernick. You know, we've seen that is that now it's gotten to a point where you're not sure if an NFL team's not taking him because they truly just don't have the fit for what he's bringing, or if it's because of everything else, the outside noise.
The one thing
that's kind of, you know, something there.
The aside I'll say from this, and it's going to be really quick because I don't want to get into that too much. This is only because we haven't really voiced an opinion on it. It doesn't fucking help when you've got the Ravens going with Harbaugh and Ozzie Smith going, yeah, we take him like he could help our team. And then you got the owner saying those boneheaded comments that he fucking made that made it seem like it was not a football decision. That's what muddies the water on that situation. But it is true.
It's like Donald Trump and his communication team.
It is true, though, what you're saying. Like, there are some teams where it's like one off the field, the Patriots are one of them. If you're a bad character, we'll ship you out.
Yeah,
we don't care.
Some very, very much care.
And Belichick will send you to Cleveland. He's not afraid.
They care about not only performance, but they care about how you carry yourself.
Yeah.
They care about how you represent their team. In other teams, the Dallas Cowboys, we joke about it, but being completely serious right now, they're a team that has taken on so many guys with off-the-field issues, and Jerry Jones will defend you in anything if you are talented. So I think that there's the difference. So will he be drafted? Of course. But what team is the next question? Because some teams where he may have gone as, you know, the second or third or fourth wide receiver, he may be dropping to lower than that.
Yeah.
Depending on how this season plays out and depending on how those other teams view him.
Well, and the thing that I'm looking at right now, and I'm trying to find out, I'm just going to go basically off of the top 5 wide receivers from last year, just off of their stats. You have number 5 last year. You've got Antonio Brown, whereas his height, if my page would load quick enough, it's not fucking working for me here, but like Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, Julio Jones his height is listed at 6'3". You've got Odell Beckham, who's 5'11", so there's one. You've got Mike Evans, 6'5". You've got Antonio Brown, 5'10", there's 2. T.Y. Hilton, 5'9", there's 3. One of the big knocks that I've seen, and why I bring up those heights, is with Callaway, and this is something that, Todd McShay mentions where he says his frame, listed 5'11", 197 pounds, could prevent him from being an NFL starter on the outside. Maybe it's the weight part. The height part to me, yeah, you want your receivers. I'd go with more guys like, I'm going to say Alshon Jeffrey height, Brandon Marshall height. Guys to where it's like, I'm going to throw it up there and you're going to catch it. Like Mike Evans height, I'll take a guy who's 6'5". Jay Cutler, throw it up there, just have the wide receiver go up and get it.
Well, here's something for you, that Golden Tate, 5'10".
Yeah.
Deshaun Jackson, 5'10". Those guys,
if you've got the speed,
those guys
it can kill.
Are going to be fine. Well, obviously, they are fine.
Yeah.
Deshaun Jackson has been good with Philly, with Washington.
Was good with the Giants. With Philly. I'm thinking of him against the Giants.
And now he's going to be with the Buccaneers.
And he's impressing already.
Yes, and then you've got Golden Tate, who is a slot guy. That's where he is. And that's where he is very, very good, is the slot.
Well,
so you have Callaway. He doesn't need to be one of the guys on the outside necessarily. He doesn't have to.
Let me ask you this.
Hold on.
Will he be?
I'm not done. He can be the guy who comes in the slot. He could be the guy who's working in a 4-wide receiver set. He's going to be fine. Now, is he a guy that right away you look at him and you're going to line him up on the outside? Obviously, no, and for the things that you mentioned as well. A 6'4", 6'5" guy is what you're probably going to want on the outside. The quarterbacks love those tall receivers, but he will fit into a system with his height. Go ahead.
Do you think, I was just going to ask you more importantly, like if you had your offense, whatever offense you like, I don't know what you think in your head, would you want him as an outside or as a slot guy?
Slot. I'd love a 6'5" and a 6'5" and a slot guy.
With the way that his speed can kill and how vertically he can go. Last guy, we got to move on because I don't want to run out of time here with our time lock on the camera. We only get 30 minutes of recording with it. But got to touch one more guy. We got to go back to the running position, Brandon. Bo Scarborough. I'm just going to ask you this. Will he be I have him right now, 30th to the Raiders. Will he be a first-round pick when we get to the 2018 draft? Or will he be a guy that we see, yeah, he's good, but he's slipped into the second round?
Well, I'll tell you is that because that he's not a really good receiving running back. He only had 4 catches last year for 22 yards. That's just not his thing. It could push him to round 2. Or it could push him to round 3. Round 2 is probably more likely, but he's such a bruising running back. He's so good, and he can just bowl you over and keep on going. But because he cannot catch out of the backfield, really not at all, that could hurt him. That could just hurt his stock. And I don't think that he's going to magically start being really good catching out of the backfield this year. Well, he could surprise, but I just don't see it.
And the thing that I kind of wonder, and I'm trying to look up right now to see if I have any news, and I'll kind of put it this way. He was a guy that last year had an injury, suffered a broken leg in the title game against Clemson. Is like, could that injury, not necessarily like, oh, he's going to be out, but that's something that might be like, oh, I got to get used to running on this again, because with a broken leg, part of the offseason, you're off. You can't walk on it. You're on crutches with that broken leg. The thing that I wonder with Bo Scarborough, and this is me as an outsider looking into the Alabama fold, because like with me, I necessarily didn't really think of he didn't catch. I'm thinking mainly about how he runs. I think in my head, I'm like, okay, Bo, what are you going to be? There's 2 ends of the spectrum that you can go with. Are you going to be the Mark Ingram side of things? That's like really fucking good. Are you going to be middle of the road, maybe the Eddie Lacy? Or are you going to be on the lower end, the TJ Yeldon? That's kind of the spectrum of Alabama running backs that you could fall on.
So let me quote something here from Washington Husky football beat writer for the Seattle Times, Adam Jude, where he said, Bo Scarborough is a better LeGarrette Blount. That's what I could see Bo Scarborough being in the NFL.
So not necessarily a number 1 guy, but a number 2 guy, because LeGarrette Blount, yeah, he could be a number 1.
Look at where he was. Look at where he was for the Patriots. But
that's a system. That's a good system already.
It's a good system. So if he's going to, let's say this, if he's going to the Buffalo Bills, no, you're not probably the number 1. But if you're going to, let's say, the Pittsburgh Steelers, or you're going to the New York Giants,
let's put it this way.
You probably can be the number 1.
Let's put it this way. And the reason why I had him go with the Raiders is I think Marshawn Lynch, they have a potential out with Lynch. I think Lynch might be done after the season. This might be a 1-year thing for Lynch.
I drafted him in fantasy over the weekend, so I'm kind of hoping this is a good project.
Even if it's not, he does have 2 years with the Raiders. Could they be a good fit for him? Like where I have him right now, would they be a good fit with or without Marshawn next year?
Yeah, I think they would be, because take a look at the guys that they've got right now. They've got Washington, and then they've got what's his other name? What's the other guy's name? I can't think of it. But they've got 2 guys who are speedy, and then that's why it works so well with Latavius Murray. Well, apparently not so well, because he's no longer there. But He was the guy, kind of the bruising runner.
He wanted money, though.
He wanted money, but Oakland wasn't going to bring him back because they apparently didn't like him. But I liked his 12 touchdowns that he had for me last year. But but that's I think a good system because Richard, Richard and Washington. Those are the quick, speedy backs. And Scarborough, who can start booming once he gets going. He's your bruising back. He's your goal line back. He would be perfect in Oakland. But Marshawn Lynch is still going to be there for a little bit. So
Yeah.
nah.
Brandon's hoping because fantasy bias.
Yeah, well, you can probably only give him about 2 years. I mean, that's probably his cap. But that's where Scarborough would seem to be. I mean, if we go through every single team, we could probably look at a couple other good systems. But
So,
Oakland
the point
is a very, very solid spot for him to go because of the fact you already have 2 speedsters. You need a bruiser. Scarborough is a bruiser.
Your point is Scarborough has to be in a system that will fit him, that will be a fit. He can't just go to any team and be
He couldn't just go to, let's say, you take away Isaiah Crowell.
Yeah.
Who's going to be so good this year.
Can't just go on the Browns and be banned.
You couldn't just go on the Browns and say, poof, here you go. Especially when you don't know how their quarterback system's going to go. You don't know how Kaiser will settle in. There's too many factors. You go to good quarterback, good receivers. You already have some running backs in place. This is your role on the team, which is where he is here because Damian Harris is your quick, shifty, fast guy who's going to catch out of the backfield. And Scarborough, but that's what Alabama has done. I mean, Derrick Henry kind of did it all himself. With Harris still there, though, they're just bruising running backs who know their role. This is what you're going to do. You're not going to catch passes. You're just going to run up the middle.
Well, and that's why I like the comparison you presented with the LeGarrette Blount, because LeGarrette Blount, look at the best years he had with the Patriots. Who was his quarterback?
Thomas Brady.
The GOAT, basically.
Yeah.
The GOAT. But this is where you guys come in. I want you guys to let me know down below. We'll let both of us, Brandon's included. Let me know down below what you guys think of anything we talked about, any of the picks that I had in my draft, any of the players that we highlighted in this podcast. Let us know what you guys think down below. Also, a bit of house cleaning to end. If you want to check out patreon.com/most valuable podcast. You get, for just $1 a month, you get an exclusive Patreon podcast each and every month. That will be starting back up in September on the 1st. For $2, you get to see the video. So 1, you get the audio, Brandon. 2, you get to see the video. We also got 2 other rewards for you guys.
Well, I was going to say, and how much is it to be able to call in and be on the show with us?
The big D-Ace, the big 10. To call in, you pick the topic, you get to do it all, and get to talk to us on a show. Or if you want to be somewhere else, but really, come on, like the Primetime Podcast is the one.
Let me tell you this. I'm talking directly to you. You've got $10. If you enjoy this, even if you feel like you know more than us, which you probably all do, and that's fine.
There have been a couple that have come out and said that.
And that's fine. Show us. Come on the show. Pick your topic. Let's talk. But you got to pay $10. And if you don't have it, I know your mom or your dad does, or grandma or grandpa or aunt or uncle. $10. That's it. Come on. You can do it. But I want to see it.
But I want to thank you guys for supporting us, giving us the likes, the comments, everything. People hitting us up. I posted my fantasy roster on Twitter, and you guys were eating it up. I got some comments. You guys tweeting your teams at me, getting the trash talk going. I love interacting with you guys. I want to thank you guys for watching our mock draft. We will be back next week. Football and the college season will be here. We'll have storylines and everything for you. But until then, have a good day, everybody.